Good. Is it afternoon now? Good afternoon. Let me just play about with all this stuff. So yeah, I said I'd come back with like a different thing. So this is like the concept of like near miss reporting and why it is fairly important to the outdoor industry and any industry that is, you know, has risk management at its key. So some of this stuff comes from like aviation or like industry where it costs money when you have accidents and downtime. Um, Obviously, the cost in outdoors is, and even in industry, can be people's lives, and so um, it is important to kind of try and counteract that. Um, and the reason I've kind of decided to do this is that I started off with this idea that I was going to do like a legal and moral talk and go through a load of other people's case studies and what we can learn and bring into um, our practice from those. But then I realized that one of the important things is us being open and honest and being able to share our experiences, good and sometimes, as you're going to see with this, bad, so that other people can learn from your mistakes. Now, one of the key reasons behind this is I'm going to call it, it's sometimes called the Heinrich triangle, the Heinrich ratio. Uh, there's another one, a slightly elaborated one called like the bird triangle. And basically, what Heinrich did, I think he was looking, I can't remember if it was aviation industry, but this has been applied to the aviation industry, or it was like a factory sort of processes. He realized that for every one major incident, could be a fatality or a major injury, there were 29 minor accidents and 300 near misses. Now, I think this has been developed so much that they can actually apply and find the ratio from um, reports in different industries now. And different industries have different ratios, but if you go with the 130 300, so every time you go down, and actually one of them is like minor injury, could be like fatality, major injury, minor injury, damage to property, near misses. um, and so if you like, some people have used like an analogy of an iceberg, in that only 10% sticks above the water, and if you try to only learn from one fatality or one major incident, or even like the 29 minor incidents, that doesn't give you the same amount of learning from looking at those 300 near misses. Because within those 300 near misses, there could have been something which, if you were aware of, you could have stopped that one major incident. Um, and so, yeah, it's very interesting. The thing is with near miss reporting is a lot of people are reticent about reporting their near misses because they will often feel judged. Now, I just put into Google because I remember the BMC had near miss reporting. Now, if you are, hill walking instructor, mountain leader, rock climbing instructor, mountaineering instructor, I would suggest you can Google BMC near miss reporting, click on the view report, and there is a massive list here of all of the near miss reports going back to 2021, yeah, or 2020. So there are hundreds, by the looks of it, of potential learning experiences where you can look at this. They are generally um, anonymous. I think they are all anonymous or been anonymized. So, it's not a case of it's not a witch hunt. It is a chance for you to go through. And I might go through this at some point and we'll just click on them. But again, because I want to do this, I kind of feel it's worth me as somebody that's been in the industry that has some kind of thick skin and is willing to put their head above the parapet, to report my own near misses, because there is learning, and some of them are from my personal climbing, some of them are from my work. I did see that there, in terms of mountain training, so if there are things on a mountain training course, there is a process. I don't know whether mountain training has got like the same thing as the BMC, or whether it links into the BMC. It Hopefully I can get an answer about that. One of the reasons that I'm not doing the legal and moral is there was something in one of the reports from the mountain training where I wanted to find out a little bit more information. Whether or not I can find that information, because the issue is ongoing, whether there are still legal issues with reporting some instance until like all legal matters have been cleared up. As you'll see when we do the legal moral talk, I'll talk through, there was some incidents that happened many, like over 5 years ago, that have only just been reported because of the coroner, and the kind of the legal proceedings had only just basically finished. So the first time I really reported a near miss that I can remember was I was working for Plasty Brennan. I had done a year as a trainee instructor, so I'd had my mountaineering and climbing instructor training, and then I did a year under like supervised kind of, so we did some more training. They then supervised us, and by the end of that year I did my assessment and kind of like became an instructor. And even during that time I was like still had clients, but I think this was in my first year after I had qualified, and I was a fairly fresh mountaineering instructor. And effectively I'd been working on a rock climbing course, so we'd done 2 days single pitch and 3 days multi pitch, and during that time I had the clients leading on those last 3 days of the course. I'd been next to them on a rope. It was the very last climb of the day. We had like a little bit of time. I think we had like an hour and a half before we needed to be in the bus. So we went, and I chose a very easy route, just to sort of like, it's a pleasant route, Boo Boo at Traumatic. And so they'd all been lead climbing. I was very happy with them. I still fixed a rope next to them. I was next to the person leading, and they sort of led up. They made the belay. Everything was going right. We were sort of like, I guess to a certain extent our guards were down, because it was like, person had led the last pitch, the other person just has to follow them up. And I'm just stood next to the belayer. I've still got their eyes on. They've put the belay plate on properly. And then, we go through the climb call. He says safe. Person's like off belay. He pulled up the slack. He then went tight. That's me. Put him on belay. On belay, climb when ready. And I looked down, and the second, who had never done this at all during the rest of the course, started untying their figure of 8 on the ledge halfway up the cliff. So I'm like, I just like, because I already had my fixed line and a gree on it, I just like pull on the gree, whip down the rope as fast as I can, and clip him in to my, when I'm teaching leading, I have like a little like get out of jail free leash, and I clipped into a cow's tail. So he was then clipped to me, and I was like, I'd already shouted at him to stop, but he just didn't. He was like, what are you talking about? And yeah, this had happened, and I had to go into a staff room full of people that are more experienced than me, and I was like, it's going to be very judgmental. And I sat at the end of the day, and I was just like, look guys, can I just mention something? and I mentioned it, and two other instructors like, I've had that happen to me before. I've had, you did the same thing. It's like, no matter what you do, you're trying to stop anything happening, but humans can, lose concentration. And it was the end of, like, it'd been hot weather. um we had been, we'd been done a lot, and it was just like, because we'd done harder routes, and it was just like a last little route just to, like, fully, give them a full day out, because we didn't want to, you don't want to go back an hour and a half, had an hour and a half time. And it was just, in that moment, we've relaxed, he's let his guard down, and this incident has happened. And it was the moment that I said it, and everybody else like, yeah, I've had this. And then there was a much bigger discussion into, things that other people have had. And in sharing that one incident, there were other incidents. I can't remember. It was, this is like 2007 probably. So it's like, nearly 20 years ago now, just under, like, 18 years ago. Um, and there were other training instructors there, and so in a way, it's if we as, like, if you are more experienced than people, and you can be brave enough to share stuff and discuss it, it's never it's hard for it to come across as not being like a witch hunt. But actually what we're looking for is to see things that might be, that we can identify in future and stop happening again. Now, that was the first one I reported. Now, I've probably had other ones. I used to work in an indoor climbing wall, and I did thousands of hour and a half taster sessions. And, I've definitely stopped people just before they've left the ground. What are you doing? Have I checked your carabiners? And they've gone, no. They've stepped off the wall, having been a thing up, and I've been like, give me the pinch test. And they're like, oh, it's undone. So there's lots of things like that. And there's also, when I worked there, Steve Mayers, who ran the wall at the time, he's back here now again, actually. He did a lot of extra training with us. So despite the fact we were qualified, he would then give us guidance. And he's like, one couple of the things that were really important were, and they still are relevant, is that, people clipping in with a carabiner, that the people become very, like, somebody that's never used a carabiner before, within 5 minutes can think they're an expert in clipping in, because it's like, I'm ready to go. And they can miss the pinch test, and it can be undone. And if the rope is tight, there is potential that they will never actually fall off, but there is more potential than when it's done up. So there was a move to, if we were teaching people to become climbers, we'd have them tie in, because it takes longer for people to get the expert halo, and they're more likely to have you check, because they don't really know what they're checking. Similarly, when we were belaying, I still, to this day, whatever I'm doing, I will never have more than two groups of people belaying at the same time, because I can tail the ropes with two hands. If there's more than two people, I've run out of hands. This is one thing that Steve drummed into me, and I've taken it to my current teaching. And so, yeah, those are things. And so, going through, and if you go through the list here, there's a lot of indoor climbing, belay failure or error, belay failure or error, belay failure or error. It's there's so many that DAV, the German equivalent of the BMC, now makes it mandatory that people have they aren't auto belay devices. Like, a lot of people see that the Gree is like, oh, it locks off automatically. It's not an auto belay device. It's an assisted belay device. If you use it wrong, it still doesn't work. So there are lots of other sort of near misses that I've had, and I'm going to go through them in no specific order. I was once in South America. I'll give you the two South American ones first. And we were top roping at a sport at a crag which was kind of had like trad routes up to, like, it's a 200-meter cliff, but we're only climbing the bottom like 30 meters. Um, and it went up to a lower off, and you kind of climbed up a trad route. So I'd climb the trad route, put a rope in, and I was aware that it was like a step roof going up sideways, and I was aware that the rope could have got stuck. So I tried to put gear in and keep the rope out, but at one point, as the climber was climbing up, the rope jammed and it couldn't go up or down, and so I basically had to come in, take over belaying with a gree and a jumar, and I just quickly sort of dogged up the rope to where the rope was jammed, unjammed it, lowered myself down, counterbalanced off the person, and then did it. Lowered the person down. We then checked the rope and just carried on. So that was a minor one. It's very rare to happen. I don't think there's, I was aware that it could happen, but there was very limited climbing where we were, so we had to make the best of what we had. Then on another day, there was a crag the other side. It was very vertical, had lots of like easy 510s. The group had been climbing for like 2 or 3 weeks. We had, gradually upped the grade that they were climbing. We had drummed into them, you should be rock, rope, you, not rock, you, rope. Because if it's rock, you, rope and you fall off, you can get the rope behind your leg and you'll flip upside down. And so we had covered this a lot. We had, why they were climbing, tried to point out when they were and weren't doing it correctly. But this one guy, just as he was doing a slightly harder route, he was near a little harder section, and he was about to fall off. He got his leg the wrong side of the rope, was flicked upside down, hit his head, back of his head against the wall, was momentarily unconscious. I think maybe just stunned. He kind of like, I shouted up at him, and pretty much instantly he was like, oh. The person belaying him had caught the fall, and he was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And he was about to go into sort of an elaborate rescue. I'm like, well, it's vertical. Let's just try lowering him down. So we lowered him down to the ground, took off his helmet, and where the helmet had gone in, he'd just caught, there was a little bit of a graze that was starting to bleed on the side of his head. He was a little bit confused. So we sat him down, and then we just sat him down, and we were, again, in South America. There are no rescue teams. We were about 3 hours away from the closest hospital. We decided that, because he hadn't been unconscious for more than like a second, that we'd just watch him, and I just monitored him for like a day or two, and he was like, yeah, I feel okay. I'm not really, don't feel any of the signs of concussion. We gave him the option to go to hospital, and he didn't, and he got better. And again, it's, we had covered this issue, but we've all got our legs the wrong side of a rope, and it just so happened that he fell off at the same time. So yeah, it's, these things happen. Another one was, so I just qualified as a mountain leader, so it must have been, I think I did that in 97 or 98. And my first job was working for a company called World Challenge. And I went to a trip to Venezuela, and I was with a group of 12 school kids, and we walked up a Tepui with a local guide. So the local guide was taking us the way up. I was there to obviously be the ML, although the local guide knew the way. I don't think anything had a map. And we get up, and there was a very short little rock section. It would be, a 20-30 foot section of grade 1 scrambling. If you went through it the right way, we go up, and it was quite easy going up because I could just. I think I had the instructor, the guide, kind of at the top, and I was on the one little step halfway up, and I could just watch them all come up each time, and I was doing the kind of fielding of the people up this one little rock step. We get to the top, we're coming back down, and on the way down, I was like, decided to stop the group at the top of the step, and I was going to bring them down one at a time, and the guide would bring them down one at a time. So I brought one down, the other guide brought one down. I brought one down, the other guide brought one down. And so there should have been 8 people at the top. And I get to where the group were, and there was only 6. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, where are Ruth and Janae? And the teacher that was with us turned around to me and said, I said they could go the other way down. And I'm like, what other way down? And I just like, where did they go? And I sprint and I find this rope path and I go down and I find them stood at the top of a 40-foot cliff. This wasn't the easy way down. It was like, so I brought them back up, and I lost it at the teacher. I mean, I was just like, I don't come into your classroom and teach in science. Why are you on? And it made me realize that we hadn't had this kind of, because we'd been together as a group for like, I think 2-3 weeks at this point, the kind of the leadership roles had kind of blurred a little bit. But actually in this time it was actually I needed to be in charge. But I just assumed that he would understand that this is the mountain terrain, so it's the mountain leader bit. And like, when we're in a town and it's like more in loco parentis, that's his thing, because he knows these kids better than I do and their parents. And so it wasn't necessarily his fault, although he had overreached. It was more part of my briefing at that specific time. And I've talked about leadership in that, sometimes we're a bit more democratic and laissez-faire, and sometimes we're more Genghis and autocratic. And this was a time where I needed to be autocratic, but because of this much longer kind of blurred lines had contributed to this incident happening. So yeah, it's just one of those things. And it's, when you are out with school groups and you have a teacher, sometimes the teacher might think that, they are responsible, but you need to set boundaries, and yeah, that's an issue. So another 2 incidents, one was a rockfall on Troll Wall, one was a rockfall on El Cap. Both were very near misses for me. I think the one on El Cap, this block the size of a TV, landed like 30 foot away from us from 400 meters above us, or like 300 meters above us. I saw it getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It exploded, got hit by a load of shrapnel. We were all lucky, as were the team of people before us. It kind of made me reflect on, you kind of think, I kind of thought El Cap was a reasonably safe place without too much rockfall, but it's not. It's a big mountain that has loads of freeze thaw, and actually a party above us knocked the rock off. Now, the thing with El Cap, and this was on the nose, is if you waited for people not to be above you, nobody would ever climb that route, or it'd get like 4 ascents a year. There was almost somebody on every belay up to like the 9th pitch, where everyone starts to separate out a bit. And then on Troll Wall, we'd gone up. We knew that as it got warmer during the day, you didn't want to be below the intro slab, so we climbed up really early, got above, camped below the actual main wall, just above the intro slab, and there was, probably isn't anymore, that was actually a snow slope there. And we decided that it was too wet and difficult, and actually we didn't really fancy it, so we backed off, so we had to sort of abseil down. There were four of us, and we did it really efficiently. But in the time it took us to abseil off, the rockfall had started, and me and one other person called Bill Barker, we stayed to coil the ropes after the final abseil. As we were walking away, there was just this massive like rumble of like, it sounded like a thunder, and we knew it was something coming. You're below a slab, so you can't actually see what's coming. And this rock came over. I ran and dived into like a tiny little. It probably would have been like an old kind of, before global warming, it would have been a crevasse kind of feature. So I dived into that, looked back, and this rock came between me and Bill. And again, it was, maybe we shouldn't have been there at that time, but the other, essentially we were trying to do a very adventurous route and in a very adventurous place. And, sadly, that's, rockfall is unpredictable. So yeah, you reflect on those, and it's like, sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, if you're willing to accept the risk, then that's okay. But if other people that you're with, so both times there I was with people that, well, actually, when I was the one in Yosemite, I was with a friend who had family and kids. And after that, we came off the route, abseiled down, and I didn't want to take him up there because I didn't want to put him in that level of risk. And we had this whole day of like walking around each other, not wanting to chat to each other, with me wanting to say, I don't want to take you up there because I don't want to put you in that position. And he was trying to work out a way to not disappoint me, to say he didn't want to go up there and be in that sort of position. And so we both, it was like, yeah, it was very weird dynamic. So another near miss for me, this was, I'd just done my winter ML training. I was starting to do the consolidation period, and me and a friend, Chris Walker, went round the back of Ben A, and we were going to climb a route on Middle Triple Buttress. I think it was called that. I can't remember the name of the route. Doesn't really matter. So we'd walked in for like, it took like 2.5 hours to walk around the back of it. It's like a massive walk in. As we walked up, there's an easy approach where you come across a terrace, and there was this really nice bit of ice leading directly up. And so we get to below it, we're off to the side, I've tied in, I'm like, I'll just nip up this piece of ice. Chris has put me on belay, and I'm like wading through this snow. It's getting deeper and deeper, and you're just there and you're like, well, there's not that much snow. And as I'm getting closer and closer, I just like, the ice is just I'm probably 2 steps away from being able to bury an axe into like really good ice. And so, but I'm using the axes, I'm plunging them down, and I'm stepping up, and as I go like this, the whole bank of snow that I'm on just starts sliding, and I start trying to run up like Usain Bolt and it just takes my feet away, and then I'm on my back, and I'm just, trying to keep myself up. So I've got like my ice axes on, I'm just pushing down, and I see Chris, and Chris is like, it's okay, I've got you, whatever happens, I'll just follow the rope. And I'm just like doing this, and the words of the person that did the avalanche training was like, in Scotland, it's not the avalanche that kills you, it's what it sweeps you over. I'm looking down, and there's like 2 little cliffettes and a little gully in between them, and I'm just aiming for this gully. I'm like, well, at least I'm not being washed over one of those cliffs. But there were some rocks in them, and I just got piled into the rocks. And yeah, survived. Now, there was a certain amount of like, I'd spent a lot of time up in Scotland. I think I'd been up there for a month, just sort of like doing winter climbing, some mountaineering stuff, sort of working towards the consolidation. I felt that I was getting there. My little expert halo was starting to form, along with Chris's arguably And we looked at this, and it was a really innocuous slope. Um, it was quite low down. It didn't feel like it was a risk at the time. And you know what I learned that day was that actually, whatever I felt I knew about snow and avalanche, was I needed to go back to the drawing board. And I actually didn't go back to Scotland for over 10 years. I was just like, do you know what? I don't need to be a winter mountain leader because I don't feel happy. You know, I felt like had some training. I should be able, I should be able to make good judgments, and this happened. And I'll talk about more about Chris on another day, because there's but um, essentially a couple of years later, Chris died in an avalanche in Scotland. Um, and I'm not saying there was, it's very hard to kind of say what happened. Well, there is things that happen, but yeah, for me, I felt in that particular thing there was a little bit of, we felt we knew what we were doing, and we blatantly didn't. Um, Another one was, where are we? Oh yeah, I was abbing into the Lost Arrow Spire, and we abseiled in, but it's like 180 meter abseil, and we only had like 50-meter rope, so we tied it two together, and I passed the knot like a absolute champion, and then kept going down. And then after I'd gone past the knot and I'm abseiling down, I look down, and the gate of my carabiner is open and wedged open, and I hadn't seen it. It was probably a little bit about, you're basically abbing in from the top rim of Yosemite, so it's like you're going over a 3,000-foot cliff, down like 50 meters and past the knot. And it was just, I think, one of those just human errors where, there's so much technical stuff around passing the knot that you have to get right, that you kind of let your guard down with the simple thing of like, I put the carabiner in and I've done it up. And I had done it up, but I've done it up with it slightly open. Simple pinch test would have sorted that out, and I skipped it. And I think that's another thing with a lot of near misses and like human factors is, humans are essentially fallible. We're very fallible. You know, if something, so one of the new ways to injure yourself at climbing walls is auto belays, and auto belays only require one person to use, and people don't clip in, or they don't clip in correctly, and that then leads to people having accidents. Interestingly, there is now a device where you can tie into a rope and it will lead belay you, so it's an auto lead belay, and people are like, oh, would you trust it? And it's like, it's not the machine that I'm worried about. It's, often with auto belay instance, it's never the machinery, or very rarely the machinery. It is more the human error that is made as a result. Another instant was, again, I was much more experienced. We were just going on a navigation course, so we were going around Crimpy Eye, just out of Capacurrig. We were walking, and we stepped over, the path. There was a boulder, no bigger than probably smaller. If you imagine like a dining room chair, the boulder was lower than that, but it would still be about the same distance of stepping over a dining room chair. And one of my group stepped over it, and I was like 30 feet away, because it was like, we're stepping over a tiny boulder on the track, and I heard the crack of her ankle, or her something break, and yeah, she broke her ankle. Again, nothing to do with, I don't think there was any error. I think what I learned was that, this reminds me of another one actually. Again, she was an older woman, probably in her 50s, and so one thing that I'm aware of is that as people get old, women hit that older, and if they hit what's it called, menopause, you can get the early onset osteoporosis. So you can get like their bones can become brittler. Uh, I had another one, another older woman on a rock climbing course where we were practicing a mantle shelf, and it was the mantle shelf was on a boulder barely above, um, you know, my shoulder height if I'm stood up, to be honest. And she went like this, and she got to there, and she went back down, and as she went back down, she actually broke a rib. But it was like she didn't even. It wasn't like a fall. It was like a slump. Um, and so yeah, it's just made me aware that you know not everyone is as robust as everyone else. Like yeah. And so the last one of my um near misses. So I'm just flicking through to see if there's any. What is is the is a combination of like like a bit of an expert Halo, but a bit of being in familiar terrain and thinking that you know that familiar terrain. So uh, years ago, when before I was an instructor, we were walking on the Isle of Arran, and it was on like it wasn't in the main like Goat Fell group. It was over to the northeast of the island. Really nice little like rounded ridge. We walked up to this mountain. We stopped for lunch, and then the instructors started walking off the mountain, and I was just like, wait up a minute, this doesn't feel right. And the reason it didn't feel right is we almost instantly got into steep terrain, whereas the map suggested we should just carry on a similar kind of thing down a ridge, and we weren't on a ridge either. And then so we walked back, looked at the map, and we realized we walked off in the wrong direction. And I caught that as like somebody doing their A levels who just really enjoyed map reading and had taken the time to look. Now, the first time I've had this happen was with my friend Simon Lake. We climbed a route on Clogwyn Thee on Glydder Fawr, and I've been up Glydder Fawr hundreds of times, and there's like a little line of cairns. You follow the cairns, turn left, and you get to the top of Igribbin Ridge, and you're down. And so we got to the top of this route, and we were just like, yeah, we just go over there, and it's down there, isn't it? And we were like walking, and we're like, it sort of didn't feel right. We're like, we're going down a lot, and then we drop out of the cloud, and we're looking down at Plassey Penny Pass, and we're like, we've walked off the wrong side of the mountain. So we get our maps and compasses out, we go back, we find ourselves, and we come off the right side of the mountain. Skip forward to like 2010. I'd gone back. I'd realised that maybe I should go back and do my winter ML. So I'd spent like an entire month, I think maybe 2 months, going out like every day, just like practicing nav. And I'd been up into Stobcoin and Lochen like 4 times in like 2 weeks, doing different things, looking at winter skills, looking at going over the top, and I got this, like, I qualified, and it was like my first day's work really, and we'd gone out and I'd taken them up one of the grade 1 gullies. We'd gone over the top, and I'm just like, oh yeah, we just walked down this ridge here. And I walked down the ridge, and then like we descended like 100 meters off the summit, and it's, I'm just like, this doesn't feel right. So I like get my compass out, and I very quickly realized that I've done exactly the same thing. Nothing happened, but because I was in familiar terrain, I hadn't done what I should have done, which was take a bearing and get off the right thing. So yeah, hopefully what I've just demonstrated there is that there are some of those mistakes are mine, some of them are wrong place, some wrong time, but each one is is a chance to learn something, and that's really what I want to focus on. And hopefully within a week or two, I'll get a response from Mountain Training about one of the incidents that I wanted to cover. And we could do this legal and moral talk, and we can look at like a lot more case studies that explore how we can manage risk. And essentially, what you've got to think, if we go back to old Heinrich's ratio, we want to learn from more than the one major incident. We want to learn from the 29 minor incidents and the 300 near misses. And you know, definitely if you are looking at becoming a rock climbing or mountaineering instructor, these incidents are well worth looking into. And you know what you could do. I like, let's find one, slip, triple, four. Remember, you can. I think you can click on them. And there's a little bit of a description. Yeah. So this one is, they thought they were experienced belayers. They'd all been signed off, but actually, unless you're holding the rope. So this is, again, this is stuff that I was taught in the 90s by Steve Mayers. And to this day, even when I'm teaching adults how to like belay at the top of routes, it's like, you know, we have, you know, I'd often do 2 days single pitch stuff where they might be belaying from the bottom or the top. Even now I'm holding the ropes because, you know, you kind of think that, oh yeah, I could look at it, but it's like, no, don't. You just really want to focus on, you know, unless your hand's on that rope. So that is my near misses. So hopefully we can there are certain things you can learn from that. And maybe, you know, maybe you've got your own near misses that you want to share either through the BMC thing, or if you want to share it here and we can go through it. I've got quite a lot of incidents that I will go through that are other people, some of which I was involved with, some of which were friends, some of which, when I say was involved, I was involved with on the rescue team. And hopefully we can learn together to be better than, you know, or further mitigate the risks involved. But yeah, thank you again. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will just try. Oh, got to get my cursor back into the right screen. Facebook.